passenger vehicle coming on the other side of the highway hits ice, crosses the median, strikes the legally parked truck. Unfortunately, there were fatalities. There was people who weren't wearing seatbelts. It was a whole thing. Family in the car. They sue the trucking company and win $150 million.
Wow.
I don't know how, and it's, they argued that the trucking company didn't have a written and documented policy on what to do in inclement weather. Even though the driver did exactly what they should have done, they just didn't have a documented policy.
You're listening to Freight Famous, presented by Rose Rocket, bringing you the people that make trucking move. From behind the scenes into the limelight. Here's your host, Justin Bailie.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Freight Famous, a podcast produced by Rose Rocket. New episodes of Freight Famous will be released twice a month. On this podcast, we talk with guests about how they build, scale, and automate their trucking and transportation businesses. I'm your host, Justin Bailie, co-founder at Rose Rocket, and today I'm thrilled to have my guest, Hayden Cardiff. We've actually been talking a little bit before the show, and he is a good dude, as was told to me by Winnie, who introduced us. So I'm happy that they did, or that she did. Hayden graduated from Carnegie Mellon University with his Master of Business Administration and is deeply immersed in the world of data and trucking technology. Hayden's journey led him to Pitt, Ohio in 2015, where he served as a consultant and witnessed the real-life challenges that fleet safety teams face every day. After seeing and understanding these hardships, he founded Idelic, the team behind Idelic Safety Suite, where he currently serves as founder and chief innovation officer. Welcome, my new friend, Hayden.
Thank you so much, Justin. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, man. So reading through that, it's funny. I had a time with Pitt, Ohio myself, actually. I was trying to get paid by them to do some work, and it was different. So I was trying to sell them something, but actually worked with probably some of the same people you did. So that jumped out at me when I read the bio. You picked a really interesting part of trucking, I think, to work in and start a business into. I think trucking trucking is a highly complicated business from an operational side. And what I find often for a lot of people who are starting technology companies in trucking, there's a few things that really jump out, is that if you haven't had the background, you tend to take what oftentimes is a very academic approach to problems here, which are otherwise not academic in practice. So of course this will work over here because it works over here, and almost categorically, it seems to fail.
Correct.
And sort of adding to that, you may be understanding that trucking has its own sort of set of rules, if you will, on how the industry works, but you have I only want to work on things like, I don't know, like load matching or sort of AI, things that are, again, like aspirational and interesting to work on. So you chose what I think is and it's taken me a very long time to actually learn this, is you pick something highly important, but sort of, this is the wrong word for it, but a little bit boring, in a sense of like from an entrepreneurial lens, right? You're sure your customers view this completely differently, but
correct.
I'd like to hear, I see you worked in the department, you probably saw an opportunity, but I'd like to hear a little bit more about that and how you came to start this and why, actually, not just because you saw a thing.
Yeah, you're spot on. Especially in the world of entrepreneurship and the Silicon Valley VC kind of community, trucking is, especially when we started, trucking was not sexy in their eyes and in that lens, especially going in and talking about safety and risk and compliance and these different things. It just wasn't that sexy. But that's a good thing, to be honest. That's a really good thing, because it forced us to really jump in and start with a problem. And that's where we got excited, is we started to, in working with actual fleets, we started to see and live and breathe the problems that they faced on a daily basis. And when you start with a problem and then try to find reasonable and effective ways to solve that problem, instead of starting with a technology, going out and trying to find a problem, it's much more effective for the customer. And I think trucking is one of those areas I love dearly. I grew up in Kentucky, moved to Savannah, Georgia, in high school. And so I'm a good old boy. I'm from the South, and and trucking is just a part of what we do. But it's just, the people are so phenomenal. I love the industry, and I love working with just very hardworking and honest people. And they're honest to a fault at times, where, if you come in and you're trying to present some slick technology that is going to revolutionize the way that they do things and really put them on a new plane, but it doesn't work for them, it doesn't match with how, like you said, the real world works, they'll tell you, and they're not going to use it. And they will be very blunt about it, no matter how cool you think it is. And so I think that mentality is so unique and interesting in the world of transportation, that it makes it such a fun place to play in, because there's so many massive, meaty, and important problems that need to be solved, but you've got to start with the problem. And I think that's where a lot of your typical startup Silicon Valley mentality kind of falls down or falls flat in this industry, is they don't fully understand the challenges that transportation providers face. And those challenges are so interconnected and interwoven, right? Like for us at Idelic, when we started really trying to home in on safety and how to identify, pull in and kind of correlate some of the data pieces around driver behavior and how to really, tighten up compliance and those different things. But then when you start to look at safety and compliance, risk has to come in, operations has to come in, proactive engagement, coaching, onboarding, retention. All of those things are so interwoven that you can't really talk about one without the other, because they all affect one another. And so when we started to really grasp that from a problem standpoint, it became so much more clear where we had to go and how we solve for these different issues, because when you start to solve for one or two of these, the rest of them start to get affected. It was really, really interesting and exciting to see, especially when we started getting customers to tell us stories of their success. So it's been a fun journey.
So when you first decided to start this, was there an aha moment of sorts that you were, and again, we'll use Pitt, Ohio as the heuristic here, because I think that's actually maybe where you saw the gap. And so what I would imagine was you saw this large department. I'm gonna just do the this is the like, I think how most startups start in enterprise B2B. You see a large department that is core to the business running on spreadsheets. Is that kind of what you saw and said there was a software for this, or was there a thing that occurred was like, this needs to happen?
Yeah. So one of the really interesting things about Pitt, Ohio is, and again, this kind of goes back to some of the core of their success, because when you look at safety, risk management, reliability, brand within the industry, especially the LTL industry, Pitt, Ohio is top of the list, right? I mean, they've won the ATA President's Trophy 7 times in a row, and fleets are only up to win that every 4 years. So for the better part of 2, almost 3 decades, they've been top notch, when it comes to safety and risk. And they were working on spreadsheets for a time, and then they actually created an in-house software solution, right? They built, they built their own kind of software, and it was helpful, and it started to identify and kind of tie in a few different pieces of their own operations. But they started to realize that there were some gaps there, and even though they were able to sell this solution to several other fleets along the way, they started to realize like it was untenable to kind of keep going on. They realized that they were a trucking company, not a software company. And so that was one of the things that I looked at as a consultant for them, is what do they do with this solution? How do they get the most out of it? How do they help the industry the most with it? And so what I ultimately kind of came to the conclusion of was, man, there is such a big gap in the industry as a whole when it comes to all of the data that fleets have at their fingertips. None of it's connected or tied together. None of it is able to be used in a proactive or predictive way. And fleets don't know how to go on the offensive with this data. They're only trying to now defend against plaintiffs' attorneys in large nuclear verdicts, and all this data is used by the plaintiff. And It's very, very challenging. Cost of risk has gone up. Insurance costs are going up. Like all these things are kind of compounding against the fleet, and so they don't know kind of what to do. And this was kind of my aha moment to kind of what you're saying is, I went in and spoke to as many different fleets as I could, 50, 60 different fleets across that time period that I was kind of diving into this, and everything from small, 15, 20 driver fleets all the way up to quite literally UPS. It's amazing who you can get into. At the time, I was actually a student still getting my at grad school at Carnegie Mellon. So it's amazing who will take your call when you play the student card, trying to learn about the industry that they love. And everywhere along that spectrum, all the way size, type of fleet, didn't matter. Everyone had the same challenge.
So you said, this is going to take this off track a little bit, but you said something interesting there. You said, and I think people hear this a lot, and again, this show really is focused on helping businesses scale. But I think with some of the listeners that I've been, and thank you all who've been reaching out to me. I've actually had for whatever reason over the last 30 days, more listeners to reaching out to us. Via our marketing team or me on LinkedIn. I'm just telling us how much you're loving the show and the value you're getting from it. So I do appreciate that, because by you reaching out, you're kind of helping me guide some of the questions by just identifying who you are. It's really interesting, right? As you put this podcast out, and we're starting to get a very significant amount in terms of a listener base going, but you don't know who's listening. You don't know what, maybe it's bots, maybe it's not even real. Like, it's really hard to know. So thank you all, just to kind of help me at least understand a little bit around even the demographics, if nothing else. But I think I do see what seems to be a lot of newer businesses, both in sort of technology and largely in transportation. But we use this thing, we talk about this as entrepreneurs, and we all go through it. What we say is, I went out and talked to 50 or 60 fleets, right? But can we just double click on that? And what are you asking? What does that actually look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. Obviously, going into it, you have to strike a really good balance of open-mindedness and being able to dive into and take the conversation where they're steering it, and take the conversation where is most important to them, the potential customer, right? But then also kind of having in mind where you need the conversation to kind of go. So you have to kind of walk that balance. So for us at the time, it was really around understanding their pain points and challenges around driver risk identification and safety and compliance, and how that ties into operations and those different kind of interconnected pieces. And so going in and asking certain questions like, hey, like, what are the biggest challenges around driver risk identification? How are you starting to leverage the data at hand? What data are you looking at? What data do you wish you had? Like, how? So those types of questions, just to kind of get them talking. And then, the fun part for me was being able to explore the pieces or aspects of what their challenges are in a more, in-depth and personalized way, right? Some people might say, hey, and we got so much data from so many different systems, and it's just like drinking from a fire hose. It's like, all right, well, tell me about that. Like, why is that a challenge in the sense, like, can you not tie those together yourself? Is there no one else in the market right now that can do that for you? If you don't tie that in, like, what happens, right?
Can I stop? That is a really important question.
Yeah.
That question right there, I think, is killer. And this is just, I'm going to just double down on this to help those sort of taking notes on this exact thing. There's a very powerful question that sounds something to the effect of, what happens if you don't do this? Yeah. And I think that really, you will see somebody who is, if you're in a conversation, their body, and it's a good flowing conversation that has a bit of a cadence to it, if you will, their body language will change in response to thinking about the answer to that question. And that's an incredibly powerful question. So I just wanted to make sure you didn't glaze over that, because I think that's key, actually.
That's huge. It's actually one of the main things that I talk about with my team as we talk with fleets, and we talk about, with potential prospects and customers, like really getting to understand their pain points. I call them pain pillars, right? Because that's where the conversation is going to stand on these pain pillars. And if you don't have these pain pillars, then there's no real conversation to be had. And the difference for me, because a lot of times people will go in and find challenges that businesses have or fleets have, but those are very different than pain, true pain. And to me, the difference between those two is, challenge is, an inconvenience, something that's happening, something that they know, that should be fixed or they'd like to improve. But a pain is when they understand that there is real monetary value, goals and aspirations for the company, and real leverage for them in their own role if that challenge doesn't get solved, right? To that exact point, I can't tell you how many times I've asked that question and people will say, oh my gosh, like, oh, it's costing me this much money, or, it keeps me up at night, or I have a goal that me personally or my team is responsible for in this next year to reduce this by this much, like, and this is what's, preventing me from doing that, right? That is pain. But on the flip side of that, when you ask that question, what happens if this doesn't get solved? You can also get responses like, well, I mean, we're pretty good now. So, I mean, you can always get better, but that shows that's not the most painful thing for them, right?
Yeah.
So then you can continue to dig in and say, all right, well, what is the thing that you need to solve right now? What is the thing that you don't think you do very well?
Yeah, I often say, and it's funny, this is almost like kind of moving to a bit of we're having a sort of a sales qualification conversation here, but it's really what this actually is. It's a similar thing. It goes back to when I'm first starting a business or I have a concept in mind and I want to validate the market opportunity. And actually, I'm going to use this to apply to sales folks too. If you're listening, you can use this because this actually applies to both things. An opportunity could be a new business idea or it could be a prospect. But what we're saying is, and Hayden's saying this, I think it's that. So when I think of like the classic BANT, like the budget, authority, need, and timeline, what we're saying here is that whether it's a business idea that you're looking for some level of validation, or really what you should be looking for is look for people to tell you why it's not going to work, but that's probably a different track of conversation because that's more the truth, and those are the things you're going to have to deal with like in the real world. But I think what we're saying here is that, or Hayden is, and I'm just joining the we party because I think it's really well said and I want to take credit for some of this, is that the need is almost the only thing that matters here. Everything else you can sort of, whether it's sales or you can kind of work around and finesse and figure out later. But if there isn't a true need, pain pillar, as you're calling it, but this is the thing that moves the needle. What will, we do things for pleasure or pain, right? Yep. And is there enough, does the pleasure exceed the pain? And the pain oftentimes, and what we're referring to is change. So does solving this enable change? And that's, I think, something that when I look back at working with the early customers to try to understand if we had a viable business model, I think something I did wrong subconsciously looking back at that was I was almost looking for customers that would tell me what I wanted to hear. And I was afraid to hear the bad things. And it was like, and they would, and then I would also, as a result of that, to ensure that they would tell me the things I wanted to hear, I wouldn't ask direct or hard questions. So I could still walk in because I was more attached to feeling validated than actually being validated. And, and I think and it's an easy trap to fall into because as human beings, we're sensitive. And so we don't necessarily want to be told this isn't going to work. Yeah. Because we've been telling everybody and around us and our family and our wives and husbands and our parents that we're going to start this business. The last thing we want is to come home and be like, oh yeah, by the way, that big idea I had is actually kind of shit. Right? So it's like you don't really want that anyway. Okay, that's good stuff. I want to go a little bit to the Idelic suite of products. I was on the website and I've heard of you guys. Wasn't totally clear on what you did. I knew it was in this general space, but I saw something really interesting. It looks like it's a product that may have just come out. Are you guys offering insurance now?
Yeah, so we actually just launched the Idelic Insurance Agency, and that is an arm of the business to really help with one of the growing challenges in the trucking industry, especially throughout the U.S., which is insurance. The cost of insurance, total cost of risk as a whole, has continued to go up over the last 5, even 10 years. And it's one of the top 5 major costs that a fleet has to deal with. But when you look at a year like 2023 and what we're getting ready to go in and face, and there's a lot of uncertainty around, is there going to be a downturn, even a recession? Like we've had a lot of fleets come to us just with general concerns, and they're right to be concerned in the sense that they're right to be thinking forward about the business and thinking about how to address some of those changes. I don't think we're going to see a full-blown recession, but it's not going to be as rosy of a picture as freight has seen over the last couple of years. But With that being said, how do you create competitive advantage in this type of a scenario, in this type of market? It's really around operational excellence. It's around how do you find those cost centers that you can turn into a major difference maker for you and your fleet. And when you look at the top 5 costs that a fleet has to face, driver pay, equipment, fuel, maintenance, and total cost of risk or insurance, there's only one of those 5 that can actually see a major difference between you and your competitors, you and other fleets that are out in the market. You're not going to pay your driver significantly less than others. You're not going to pay for significantly less fuel. Maintenance costs and equipment costs are going to be relatively the same as everyone else. Where do you see the most difference? Where can you actually see a 50 to 100% swing compared to your peers? It's around insurance and total cost of risk, right? And so that's where we get really excited in engaging with fleets, because that's where fleets are seeing the most success in working with Idelic and working with the different products that we provide, both on the software, kind of our program, our core historical offering, and being able to lower crashes, lower losses. But that obviously, you lower losses, you lower that side of the house and improve on safety and risk. It's a much better picture for you for insurance. Now, the challenge that the industry has historically faced is insurance providers typically look for and want 4 to 5 years of consistent lower losses before they give you a relief on your premiums, right? 1, maybe 2 years, that's an anomaly. 3, you're getting there, but 4 and 5, now you're starting to see a trend. Okay, I'll give you better rates. That doesn't work. When you're making investments today and lowering your losses today, that doesn't really help you, to get an impact and a reduction on your insurance premiums in 5 years. So what we've done is we've actually created the Idelic Insurance Agency to go out and to sell insurance products for our customers. So for fleets who we know and who we are confident buy into the Idelic program, the Idelic way, this idea of identifying at-risk drivers, coaching them through progressive discipline and coaching and through professional development plans. When you do that, you see success, and that success stays for the long term. So we can actually go in and give a much better insurance outcome for these fleets if they're doing the right things based on the Idelic program. And so that's one of the things that we get really excited about is being able to kind of pair up our core program, which is the software and the playbook that we provide, with insurance offerings through that Idelic Insurance Agency arm, to really better not only our customers but the industry as a whole.
There's something interesting about this, because I've often thought about, you see it even in like just B2C insurance. If you put a what would be equivalent in trucking of sort of an ELD in your car, you may get a rate reduction because they can see things breaking, basically what occurred during the accident, and then also sort of driving behavior specifically, like how do you drive normally. However, that's a pretty small piece, or incomplete piece, maybe would be a better way to put it, of the puzzle in terms of how do you drive to better rates. Not just the insurance company saying, we will incent you to give us the data we need in the event of an accident, basically. Right. And so this actually has a really interesting, like, I think that's you said it, but I think that it bears almost saying again, real time payback on the investment you're making into the way that you are, a term you use that I use all the time. I feel like you and I have gone through to the same like school of vernacular somehow. So like operational excellence. So having that operational excellence pay dividends now. While you're doing the work now. Now I want to go a little further with that though. Are you, so in order to work with this product, you need to be an Idelic, you need to be on Idelic software, because it's really, this is the connection between the two. Correct. Because as you said, this is kind of part of the program. Makes perfect sense. But are you able to help in, if you have a new customer today, are you able to get them into meaningful savings in a shorter period of time?
Yeah, so that's the big crux of this, right? It's being able to really understand and get a familiarity with the fleet to buy into this overarching program, right? You have to be willing to utilize the system, be a part of the movement towards a better, safer fleet. And so, right now we are working with broker partners across the industry to bring in net new business from bring in partners and customers for the Idelic software and kind of program in conjunction with quoting on insurance. Right now, it is a much stronger case for fleets to be able to come onto the Idelic program beforehand and then be able to show that reduction and improvement in the months leading, months after going live, leading up to your next renewal. Obviously, we can be even more aggressive and even more confident in your, in your practice as risk reduction. But there's a lot that goes into, risk and insurance quoting and those different things. We have a team that does that. I am not licensed to sell insurance, and so I want to make that very clear. And obviously our software team is not either. But that's why we kind of created this Idelic Insurance Agency arm to be able to go in and be able to provide that paired impact for our customers. And this is where for us it's a huge piece of this is really just for fleets who buy in. For fleets who can and do show the willingness to engage, like they see lower losses. On average, our customers drop 20% in their accident frequency in the first year of using our system. Average, right? Fleets who use our system effectively and fleets who don't, right? Across the board, not just cherry picking the best. On average, 20% reduction in their frequency. And so when you take that type of reduction into an insurance renewal, especially an insurance renewal where we know that those are trends, not anomalies, you're helping yourself tremendously in these conversations. And it's really around the partnership. That partnership is what we're looking to create and provide for our customers when it comes to how they think about total cost of risk. I'll tell you this too, a lot of our customers, a lot of our fleets will increase their retention, increase their deductible, essentially, taking on more risk themselves, knowing that through the changes that they've made, through the improvements that they've seen through the Idelic program, that they can bear more risk and save more money in the long run by increasing that retention, taking, self-insuring up to a higher rate. Those are things that we definitely, get excited about is when fleets start to take more control. So we have a wide variety of insurance products that kind of fit whatever need you have as a fleet. And it's all really based on the fleets who self-select into this mentality of we are the best and we want to prove it, and therefore we want the best results because of it. And those are the type of fleets that we encourage and we essentially attract as Idelic customers.
Yeah, I mean, it makes a ton of sense. It's really a nice way to execute the vision, because I think when I picture a business like this and it gets started, oftentimes as a startup founder, I tend to look at, especially venture funded startups like yours and mine. You kind of have to look. I always often think what did the deck look like when you were raising a fund? Because every deck has to end with the final slide saying, and then we take over the world. Yeah. So it's or actually no, the most recent version of that is, and then we become the bank is actually the final statement on that final slide, right? Yeah. So, and those in startup totally get what I'm saying, and that may be completely going over a lot of listeners' heads, but if you've ever raised venture capital, you basically, what I'm saying is, at the end of your presentation, you have to what is the, and every year this number increases, so I'm just going to make up a word, what's the $10 bazillion idea basically at the end? And so when you look at a startup that starts as a simple, we're going to do driver safety as a business. You're like, okay, but is that, what's the size of that market? Is that investable? There's these longer tail vision and ideas that come at a certain point of market penetration or maturity, whether it be in the product or the team, usually a bit of both. And so when I say I love seeing the vision executed, it becomes somewhat of an obvious conclusion that insurance would work here because you have the data to provide You have the data that insurance companies dream of.
Yeah.
So then you can either just keep packaging and sending it off to them, or you can do it yourself and be even closer to the problem.
Yeah. And Justin, I mean, you hit on this really, really well, right? Like you've got to be able to find those next level connections, the ability to then transcend kind of what your current and core offering is and does, and be close to the product. And this is where for us, when we go and engage with fleets, they have all of these tangential problems, and being able to then kind of tie into and support and fill needs that are tangential, it makes the whole process for them so much more fluid, right? There's just this continuity between it, and for you as a business, it really, one hand washes the other.
Yeah, this for the new businesses out there is called value creation. And so this is what this is what we're all here to do, because at the end of the day, even in that deck, if that 10, I don't even remember the number I just made up, but that gigantic, number taking over the world, being the bank ambition at the end doesn't directly correlate to a market need or a value, it's not going to work. It's just simply that a slide on a deck. And so be able to find there's no shortage of problems. There's no shortage of ideas, but there is always a shortage, therefore always a demand for extraordinary value. And a growth of that value is you can it's not just about selling more stuff into an organization. It's about creating deeper value into the areas that you're the best in the world at already, and just keep going down that path to sort of open that up. So again, going back to where you start to where you go next, I think is really powerful and the right way to do it. And it sounds silly, but not often done. It's very easy to look at, I'm going to kind of pick on payments a little bit here, but in banking and stuff like that, just because just fintech was so hot and they were taking all of the venture capital money for a few years there. But it's like, if the customer doesn't want to move their money through your product, then it doesn't make sense to put payments in there. That's not value to the customer. Yeah. That is value to you. Yeah. Ergo, it probably will not get used. Yeah. And so there's these, and again, there's a whole bunch of versions of that. That was just kind of close to me, but
no, think of that. Exactly. And I think you hit on the data as well. And I think this kind of analogy that you mentioned beforehand with personal auto, I think is very, very apropos for the conversation here. Is like, personal auto, you stick essentially a telematics into the car, and they have the data on you and how you're driving, and they can essentially pattern match that between other drivers. Are you a higher or lower risk? Can they give you better rates? All that kind of fun stuff. The challenge with commercial auto, though, is it's not all about the individual driver. Quite honestly, it has very little to do with the individual driver. It has everything to do with the fleet and your process, your risk reduction measures, your coaching, your hiring, your compliance. All of the things that you do systematically is what gets put on trial when you are attacked by the plaintiff's bar, right? So it really has little to do with the facts of any individual case. Was your driver driving the right speed, the right direction? It doesn't matter. It's, as a fleet, are you doing the right things? And so as an insurance provider, it's very challenging to go in and look at just raw telematic data and understand, is this fleet going to be higher or lower risk, right? Like, just that alone is not super indicative of, are they going to see a lot of losses? And so, using a system like Idelic, where fleets can come in and highlight, like, are they doing the professional development plans effectively? Are they coaching their drivers on their multi-step, multi-touch point engagements? Are they using the watch list, keeping the top 5-10% of those drivers consistently on those coaching plans? Like, those are the things from a systematic standpoint which protect you in court. They protect you, not only help prevent crashes from happening, obviously, but also if something does happen, regardless of it's your driver's fault or not, you now have a defensible position to lower the losses. And that, for an insurance carrier and for an insurance book of business, is really, really important. It's kind of this mentality of going from InsurTech 1.0, which is, how do I just get faster quotes, easier to bind, just make the process easier, but yet the risk doesn't change and the book of business still sucks, right? To this InsurTech 2.0, where it's how do we actually make you as a fleet better? How do we make you more profitable? How do we make you a lower risk? And how do we get everyone to benefit from those?
Well, I think a really sort of perfectly timed thing that I learned about this past week, and I'll give a plug here. So I was mentioning when you and I were talking pre-show, I went to a conference in Palm Beach last week at the BGSA Supply Chain Conference, which was wonderful. It's an invite only, but I'm sure if you reach out to Ben Gordon, he'll invite. It's an executive conference, and again, just a spectacular time. I encourage anybody listening to try to go to the show. It's not like a show I've ever been to, and partially that for one of the reasons is the speakers they have are the most senior of senior people. So an example I'm going to give here is the chairman and CEO of Vestas, and for those that don't know, they're a $4 or $5 billion privately held LTL carrier, which is a show unto itself, because I don't know how, like, that is, you want to talk about, like, I was saying this to my wife because she's actually in LTL, but I was like, is there a more boss company? Like, how hard is it to build a trucking company? How do you build a $5 billion LTL company? Like, that is God's work right there. Like, I don't know how you do that. That is unbelievable. I mean, they say my hat's off. Like, I don't have words to describe how impossible that must be to do. Anyway, when he speaks, you listen for good reason. This is a man of incredible wisdom and experience. And he said his two biggest fears every day, and he said this funny thing, he said, every day we start with 0 shipments, right? And he said every day before our first shipment, the things that I think about, the things that I worry about are every day is a cyber attack and a nuclear verdict. And I actually, as a Canadian, didn't actually really understand what a nuclear verdict was. Yeah. So I understand. So in Canada, because most of our this is mostly an American show, and so I talk about some of the naive aspects of me being a Canadian on the show off and on. This is another one. Is I've spent enough time in the U.S. and watched enough U.S. TV to understand the very sort of predatory nature of the legal system.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
When it comes to, there's lots of names like ambulance chasers and these types of things. What I didn't appreciate was how disproportionate some of these settlements can be to trucking companies. Therefore, how profitable it can be to target companies. And I can only imagine the business, whether it be the lobbyists, whether it be I can only, and I really, again, I am 2 questions deep on this topic, but to hear you sort of one of the sort of godfathers of this industry say that he has 2 concerns, and that is one of them, that really struck me. And it got me thinking a lot about that. And so as you're saying these things, it's like that. This is a thing.
It's real. It's very, very real. I mean, they've got legal practice, legal definitions and names based off of it. Reptile theory is one of them, right? I mean, you talk about conferences. Plaintiffs' attorneys have massive conferences every year on how to best sue trucking companies. What are what you should go after in discovery? What's available? What data is there? How to get the jury on your side? I'm talking like to the effect of the facts of the case clearly state the trucking company did nothing wrong. How do you still get multiple millions of dollars out of them? And this is one of the things. It is one of the things that the U.S. legal system needs to change quickly. Tort reform and how punitive damages and how all that is effective, especially in the trucking industry. But I mean, when you've got cases where large OTR company driver, inclement weather comes on, parks on the side of the road, clearly parked in a legal parking space off to the side of the road. Passenger vehicle coming on the other side of the highway hits ice, crosses the median, strikes the legally parked truck. Unfortunately, there were fatalities. There was people who weren't wearing seatbelts. It was a whole thing. Family in the car. They sue the trucking company and win $150 million.
Wow.
I don't know how, and it's they argued that the trucking company didn't have a written and documented policy on what to do in inclement weather, even though the driver did exactly what they should have done. They just didn't have a documented policy. Therefore, other drivers of this fleet aren't going to follow it. Therefore, they need to punish them to prove a point. That's, he's not wrong when he's saying that nuclear verdicts are the things that keep him awake. He's not the only one. That's one of the things that kind of going into this. I know the trucking industry as a whole is tired of hearing about it. For the past 5 years, that's all we've been talking about is nuclear verdicts, tort reform. But it's still one of the biggest causes of heartache and pain, both in dollars spent as well as insurance increases. It's a challenge, and being able to have your data buttoned up, your process buttoned up, and proactive and predictive, coaching, all are things that help to prevent those.
Yeah, and I think, and I bring that up, I think, just to highlight the, sort of talk about sort of top 2 business problems or areas of the business that the absolute senior leadership is caring about. It just does speak to the importance of the business that you're building. As I kicked it off, as boring as it might be, it is absolute mission critical to keeping people, and quite frankly, you are keeping people safe. Like, there is good work being done here for the betterment of. If you are reducing accidents by 20%, you've saved people's lives with this product, right? Yeah. And so that helps you get up in the morning. That's a good mission, right? It
sure does. It sure does. I mean, that's one of the things as a company, we're incredibly mission driven, right? Safety is one of our core values. And just being able to know that you're making a difference, know that you and your family can go out on the road and share the road with these truck drivers and feel confident and excited. It's one of the best things. I love it. My wife is very tired of it at this point. Although, to her credit, she's become a really good trucking nerd. Road trips are never the same, but just being able to go down the road and see, like, oh yeah, they're a customer, and just know and have confidence that their drivers are doing the right thing, that they're being trained the right way, that they have the right mentality. It's definitely gratifying for sure.
Yeah, man. Well, it's good work, and we all thank you for it. And as to our conversation earlier, I'm looking forward for you and I to get to know each other better and doing some work together. I think there's great synergy here, personally and professionally. So, where can our esteemed guests find you?
Yeah, Idelic.com, IDELIC.com is a great place. Feel free to reach out to me personally, Hayden, HAYDEN at Idelic.com. So we're easy to get a hold of.
Hey, and if you're listening and you like the show, leave us a comment, give us a like, or whatever the button on the device and platform it is that does positive things or negative things, I guess, if that's how you feel. But everybody have a great and happy week, whatever week you're listening, and we'll see you soon. Bye for now.
Thanks so much.